Welcome to another Brand Doctor podcast episode. We are live today with a very, very special guest. I am happy to introduce to you guys Mary Shores, the Accidental Mentor. What is going on, Mary?
Hey, Henry, it is so exciting to be here and to be live with you on Facebook this morning.
We do these podcasts very, very different than a lot of other podcasts out there. My biggest thing is that I want to engage the audience. I want to make this a interaction between us and them. So I want to get the audience involved. And this is very different from a podcast perspective, because a podcast, people are so used to just listening to people jabber, and they don't really get the full, experience. So what I want to do is, for everyone that's tuning in on Facebook today, if you have any questions specifically for Mary, we will field those questions as the podcast goes on, and we'll sort of throw those to Mary, and we'll have this to be a very interactive conversation. So before we get into the real value and the meat and potatoes of everything, because you have a very awesome brand, and I was very attracted to it when I first came to it. I want to know how you got the name The Accidental Mentor and how this brand developed from the bottom.
Yeah, the name came from one day I was on a podcast with, I think it's Jeremy Ryan Slate on his podcast, Create Your Life, if you've ever heard of that one. And he was calling himself the Accidental Millennial. And he goes, I didn't know I was a millennial until someone pointed it out to me that I was a millennial. And I said, oh, that's how I feel about mentoring. And so I became the Accidental Mentor. And so I would say that the reason that it came about is because I've been a CEO of a brick-and-mortar company for 20 years. So in 1998, when I was 24 years old, I started my first company. And then 20 years later is when I really got involved in the personal development space, became a Hay House author, and really started taking the idea of leadership and mentoring very, very seriously. And I would say that it started with my staff. The reason I call it accidental is because I couldn't understand why my staff always seemed to hang on every word that I said, or why they always wanted to pick my brain about everything. And so it took me years to get comfortable with the idea that, wow, you know what? I do have a lot of value. I've graduated into that space of becoming the elder, becoming a part of that wisdom tribe who has figured out that running a business, being a leader, being even at the top of your game is more than ever about making an impact in the world, and really changing the paradigm of how and why we get things done, and creating a strategy around that. And people just sort of started looking at me as this go-to person. I remember one time I was in a meeting at a hospital, and the woman introduced me, and she said, I don't know how Mary does this, but you ask her any question and she will instantly come up with the solution for you. And I was very intimidated by that, because I was like, oh, that's a lot of pressure. But I don't know. It all worked out. So that's the best story I can give you as far as the Accidental Mentor. And, some people just love to give out advice, even when they're not asked.
Yeah. What I've noticed to be very, very interesting as I built my career in the branding space and the design space is, the deeper you go into someone's life in regards to helping them find their purpose, helping them find their mission, helping them find why they're even in business, right, is something that I've struggled with my whole life, because I was always afraid to ask the deeper questions, right? But what I realized was the value of people will determine your value based on the quality of the questions you ask. And one of the things that I realized was I was just touching the surface with these folks when I was trying to mentor them and coach them with their branding. And then when I started to go really deep and I started to pull out things that they never even thought of, and it gave them a whole deeper perspective. They were like, now Henry's telling me things I don't know. Now I want to listen even, more, so when you're working with your clients, I want to talk about the importance of keeping your mind, what you put into your mind, what you let out of what you keep out of your mind, why is that so important to the success of your business?
Well, I think it's important to not only the success of your business, but also to your life, especially because if you're a person that is in the entrepreneurial space, or you're considering making that leap from corporate or, starting your own business, or if you're a young person, one of the reasons are that you have to detach yourself from all of the distractions in life. In other words, when you're an entrepreneur, what happens is you get attracted to shiny things quickly, and you can get this overwhelming amount of opportunities, and you can start to chase down rabbit holes. Mm-hmm. And so the more that you dial that in and realize, I love how you started that question off with purpose, because this is what I want to say. Purpose has become this, I call it the big P word. It's this elusive thing that is hiding behind a curtain, and you're supposed to go through some deep, dark, travel through the bowels of Mordor in order to find your purpose. When the truth is, I can tell people how to dial into their purpose right here, right now, which is to figure out whatever is your natural born skills, gifts, and talents. And that the more you feed those skills, gifts, and talents, the more that they grow into the foundation of whatever it is you're supposed to be doing in life. And so if you don't know, even if you're thinking, well, I don't even know what my skill set is, a great thing that you can do is you can take a personality test online, and you can pull out some things about yourself. You can print out the profile page of the personality test. You can take a highlighter and just the top 3 things that appeal to you on the positive characteristics part of the personality test. You can highlight those and then ask yourself, how can I bring these skills, these characteristics into my job? So whether it's that you have a job, whether it's that you own your own business, and if you're not doing anything even in the realm of those things, ask yourself how you can bring that into your life, either by volunteering or working with friends or your children. I mean, just whatever that is. And then bringing this back to the part about being distracted, because you're going to get things flying at you from all angles. And I can tell you that transitioning from that brick and mortar type of business to an online space, I have been experiencing an abundance of this. And so it's like, I have to really keep clarity, laser focused clarity. And we hear that word a lot, right? Focus. What you focus on grows. I mean, it's everything from The Secret to Tony Robbins to Mary Shores, probably yourself. But how do we figure out what to focus on? That's the really important question. How do you know one thing is better to focus on than another? And I think that could be a really great conversation for us to have.
Yeah, I love it. Do you recommend any specific personality tests that they could go online and do?
I think that the Myers-Briggs is a really great one. There's so many, I'm not even attached to one's better than the other. You could do free ones. I just recently did the Gallup Strengths Finder.
That's a big one.
And that's a paid one though, and you get your top 5 strengths. Uh-huh. And I really believe in this concept of feeding your strengths. When I was growing up, I think that I was taught that I needed to overcome my weaknesses. And I believe that this is wrong thinking, because what you really need to do is feed your strengths. And so once you find out those top 5 personal characteristic indicators, just apply them in whatever way, shape, or form that you can. So I like Myers-Briggs. I also love DISC, DISC. And I thought the Gallup Strength Finder was interesting, but I'll be honest. I mean, why pay $89 when there's plenty of free ones?
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I have some questions because you have a very specific framework that you work with your clients on. And I love that because I feel like when you can have a process to put your clients through, they feel more comforting. They know that they're going to go from point A to point B. So, or I should say from A to Z, and you're going to help them get there. Right. So Mike, you have this called the core four. I wanted to get into the core four. So what exactly is the core four?
It's perfect to talk about the core four right now because we were just talking about focus and getting into this conversation about focus. And we were talking about getting those overwhelming distractions coming in and hitting us from everywhere. And so what I started to notice was that I was working on so many things that I wasn't working on anything. And at the beginning of this year, it got so overwhelming that I was like, this madness has to stop now. And I was talking to a friend of mine, and we each decided we were going to choose 4 core areas of our business to focus on. So we asked each other the question, where do we see ourselves in 2 years? So what you're going to do, because the core 4 is different than a goal, because a goal is like has an end result. Okay. So the goal might be, I want to have, I want to be an influencer. I want to have this many paid speaking opportunities. I want to make $1 million. I want to grow my company by 40%, whatever. That's the goal. Okay. The core 4 is what are the core areas of my business that I need to enhance in order to make that goal. Okay. So for my particular business, we chose 4 things, which was sales, and the reason now you might think everybody would choose sales, but I want to give you a little bit of how you come up with your core 4.
Please.
So for the past 2 years, they had been big investment years. So we had invested in creating a brand. We had been investing in separating my 2 careers, like the business, the brick and mortar that I own and the personal development brand. So we've been working on splitting those in 2. Okay. So we had 2 years of a lot of investment. This meant a new website, new branding, new hiring, training, development. Okay. So after a period of investment, of course, now you want your focus to be sales. So I'm not suggesting that sales would be every single person's focus. All right. So that was one of them. Then another one was using our branding to the fullest, because now that we had invested in a brand, we needed to know all the areas of our business that we could implement our brand to. So this looked like things like creating branding documents whenever we send out a proposal instead of it being just on a plain Word document.
And why is this so important to you? Why is branding so important to you and your business?
That's such an interesting question, Henry, because number one, I think that people like you have really highlighted the effects and the connections you can make by having a brand, that it's a recognition thing. It's people to understand your energy, so to speak, like who and what you're about. And I really do believe that creating that brand story, and it's a way for people to feel connected to you in a deeper sense of really understanding what you're about. So branding is not something with my brick and mortar that I was concerned about, say, even 3 years ago. I think that as an influencer, it's very different because you start with a brand. But if you have a service business like a heating and air company or, whatever, like a local based service company, you don't start off thinking about a brand. You start off thinking about the work, right? So I think the point is it's never too late, because I was 20 years in. So one of our core 4 was like, let's figure out how we can really utilize our branding to the fullest. And I can actually show you, I've got something right here that shows the result of that. And I'm sorry, because I know that's shifting paper, but like, here's the brand we created for my brick and mortar. And so we started with our documents, like they're all just very cohesively. This is a workbook for when I'm teaching seminars, but there's just a nice, branded look.
I love it.
So that was one of the core 4. And then another one was industry involvement. So we work a lot in the healthcare industry, and we wanted to focus, how can we get maximum industry involvement in the healthcare industry? And then the last one was creating custom and training. So we go in and we do a lot of custom corporate trainings. So that means, so now you've got these 4 areas, Henry. And what this means is, and again, we're talking about focus. I want to people to remember, as you're thinking in your mind, what are my core 4? Anytime our energy was going outside of that core 4, then that should throw a yellow flag. So for example, my business development coordinator, she wanted to learn some other areas of the business, and she wanted to learn some administrative tasks, which I'm all about. But we had to dial that back. We had to raise the yellow flag and say, is her learning administrative tasks right now part of the core 4? And the answer was no. And so we had to keep every time we get something that's outside of that core 4, we have to raise that yellow flag and really make a decision about whether or not to move forward with that. And this worked so magically in a very short period of time, like 3 months, we saw a total turnaround in productivity because we weren't allowing ourselves to get distracted by outside forces that were keeping us from the momentum of moving into those ultimate goals.
Man, the power of focus.
The power of focus is so incredible. It was funny. I was on a strategy call with a client 2 days ago, and we were talking about how are we going to generate revenue? What are some revenue streams that we could create inside of your business? Because I see these brands popping up left and right. They're some of them are beautifully designed. Some of them need some work. However, they don't have a backbone of the business. Like, they don't have any back end business. They don't have any revenue streams. They have no way they're so lost when it comes to creating the revenue that's supposed to move and drive that business. And we realized that we were focusing in on the wrong things. And we found this revenue stream, and it was a group coaching program that we helped design and put together for him. And we realized if we get 100 people into this program, we're talking $7,500 a month in revenue, and so I said, where do you want to direct your focus? $7,500 a month, it's a decent chunk of change. You know what I mean? And then, scale that to 1,000. Now we're talking $75,000 a month in revenue. Like, so where are you focusing your energies? I love that. So you've created this core 4 to really help focus your energies and your finances and what you're investing in to really drive the business forward. Yes. And I love that you just mentioned your client and how he could take this from 100 to 1,000 by scaling that. And I think that one of the mistakes that I see early entrepreneurs making is the failure to document everything. And so one of the things that I did right 20 years ago was I documented everything that I do. As a matter of fact, I have this joke in my office, but it's kind of it's not a myth, it's true, but I will say there is a work instruction on how to create a work instruction. And so the thing is, Henry, that as you're creating, so like as you're going through this process with your client, it's very important to take those concepts and document them so that he can scale, because you can't scale if you're working in the business. You need to be working on the business. And see, this goes to that mindset thing, because we can be work hoarders. And what I mean by that is we're hoarding the work ourselves instead of letting someone who has a better capacity to do that. And we as entrepreneurs can become at capacity very, very quickly. And so going back to the core 4 is great for focus, but now after you've got that focus, you're going to move into strategy. Okay. So you take the core 4 and each one of those core 4s. So like, for example, industry involvement was one of ours. So now we need to reverse engineer with the end result of industry involvement and reverse engineer that. So the first way that I do that is I say, what are 6 things, like give me 6 ideas, right? And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a 1-page action plan out of just that one section of my core 4. Okay. The 1-page action plan will look like a step-by-step strategy when I'm finished with it. All right. So it's going to be reverse engineering that one bullet. I'm a bullet point person. Do you know what I mean by that?
Me too.
Okay.
Me too.
Got it. So don't write me a long email, just bullet points. Put a little dot and my eyes will be drawn to it. So bullet point, Can we do industry webinars within the healthcare talking about communication strategy? That's one of the things that I teach is communication strategy. That's actually what Words.work is all about. Number 2, and number 3, we come up with 6 of them. And then for each of the 6 things, so let's take this webinar concept, which I'm sure you're very familiar with given what you do. So, all right, it's not just good enough to do a webinar. What are the things that we need to do to turn that webinar into revenue? So it's things like we need to have an entire email strategy written and finished before we even schedule the webinar. We need to figure out how we can get 200 people on our free webinar that's going to turn into 80 phone appointments. That's going to turn into 20 sales. And so now it's the reverse engineering that. Okay, what are all the components we need to fill in each one of those gaps? How are we going to get the 200 people on there? How are we going to end the webinar that is inviting them to a meeting and hoping that 80 people will click that link and schedule a meeting with us? Once we have those phone calls set, how are we going to turn those phone calls into 20 sales? And there needs to be a strategy in between each one of those spots. Okay. So that was just one of the things. And remember I said I needed 6. So then you take it all and you write out your step-by-step, very pragmatic strategy so that you can follow it and implement it. And you can put it all, you can do reverse engineer a work back plan so that you're putting it all in, say, like a project management software like Basecamp, where you're delegating everything, you're assigning the deadlines. And okay, so now you're going to do that for each one of the core 4s. So when you're finished, you're going to have like a beautiful 2-year business blueprint.
So I'm going to stop you right here because I'm listening to this going, 2% will do this and 98% won't. And I want to ask you, Mary, what is the consequence of not developing great strategy and not doing this exercise inside of your business?
So I think it boils down to one question. Do you want to make money? Do you want to make money long-term? And do you want to make money in a way that you're not feeling like you're trudging through the mud? Now, you're right. And I guess, this is not hard to do, by the way. Even though it sounds like a lot, asking yourself these questions, when you get into that flow, you know what I'm talking about? It's just going to come like quick. This is not hard. Believe me, this is much easier than sitting down and trying to write a business plan, which I have never done in 20 plus years. Not one time have I wrote a business plan, but I have transformed departments. If I have a department that's underperforming and I sit down and I write a 1-page action plan, I will turn that department around in 8 weeks. Every single time. Now, let's talk to that 98% that aren't going to do it. Okay. Just do one. Just pick one area and just try it. You can actually write a 1-page action plan in less than an hour. So my suggestion would be just do one at a time. Maybe write 4 areas of focus. By the way, I did this in my personal life too. So, not only do I have that core 4 for my business, but I also have a core 4 for my personal life, which is really helped me immensely this year, get laser focused on the direction that I want to take my life. And it's just turned into this, it makes it really easy to make decisions. And I don't have to put as much mental energy figuring out what I'm going to do. So for that 98%, my suggestion is, you know what? Just try one.
Yeah. Crawl before you walk. Yeah. I love that. So this is I'm so glad that you're touching upon this today, because what I typically see when clients come to me is they self-prescribed themselves as needing XYZ, whatever. Right. And then when you start to ask those deeper questions, you start to realize that it's not a logo, it's not a website, it's not this, it's not that. It's some deeper stuff, this deeper underlying stuff that they never thought of, right? And so it's so key to understand how deep, like the deeper you go, the better the outcome, in my opinion, So it's, you may think you need a website, but why do you need a website? And then, I love this. Dean Graziosi says this a lot, and it's in his book, like the 7 layers of why. If you ask yourself why 7 times, by the 7th answer, you really get to the bottom of what the hell you're doing and why you're doing it. And I think it's just so important to have a strategy in place to drive this business, to create revenue, to make profit, to scale. And, you touched upon a lot of different things like delegating. And I was like, we got to talk about that for a second, because it's so easy to get caught up in trying to do everything inside of your business and working in it. I just wrote a whole blog post yesterday about a guy that I met about 10 years ago. I was just starting my career, real polished dude. I actually looked up to him quite a bit because he always looked like he had his act together. Like he's always dressed sharp, and he was always like this positive guy, and he was always patting me on the back, keep rocking. I love what you're doing, blah, blah, blah. And as I grew to know him, I saw him start to deteriorate a little bit. And I was wondering, what in the hell's going on? Well, what was happening was he was so busy working in his business, not on his business, that the anxiety and the stress and all this started to get the best of him. He developed stomach cancer and died 4 months later.
Wow.
And I talked about this in this blog post yesterday, because I said, having a brand but no business will literally kill you. And this poor guy, and every time I hear that Billy Joel song, "Only the Good Die Young," I think of him, because he was this energetic, spunky guy. Like he just, you wanted to be around this guy. And for that to happen to him, it was like such a punch in the gut when I heard the news. And so doing all of this deep work and keeping that mindset strong is what's going to drive your business, build your brand, get you in front of the right people. And so the reason why I wanted you on the show today is because I wanted you to really shed some light onto that and really understand you can have a brand, you can have a business, you could be an entrepreneur, but if you're not making money, you have a hobby. And entrepreneurship is not cheap. There's other hobbies out there. You go fly a kite on the weekends. It's less expensive than trying to be an entrepreneur. And so I'm trying to explain to people that, like, if you don't have a brand strategy, if you don't have a strategy behind why you're doing what you're doing, that's going to make you profitable and generate revenue, I would second guess, opening up a business just because you think it's cool, or just because, you want to get out of the current situation that you're in. And so let's talk about mindset, for example, and turn this corner. So when you're up against the mountain and you're trying to scale this puppy and you're slipping and you feel like, giving up, and you're just like at your wit's end, I don't know what else to do, nothing's working. How do you handle entrepreneurial anxiety?
Okay, so you have really brought up a lot of things. And by the way, I love it when you go like this, because you look like a pharaoh.
I never got that one before. I heard Pitbull. I heard Vin Diesel. I never got the pharaoh before.
You're a pharaoh. You need one of those gold hats.
I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Okay, so I started my first company at 24. And running a business is just in my blood. It's what I was born to do. I tried to have a job once. I got fired.
It happens.
I think if I tried to have a job, it wouldn't work out, because I would just start telling people what to do. So one of the things that is my superpower is I can look through and I can get through bullshit faster than anyone else. And I can make the connections between like what is waste and what needs to happen. So you've brought up mindset, you've brought up delegation, you've brought up a lot of things. And you've even brought up the fact that when we're not paying attention to these things, we're going to make ourselves sick. Now, one thing, and I would love the masculine perspective on this, because I can tell you what's happening in the feminine entrepreneurial space is that at about the 20-year mark, women are getting sick with adrenal burnout. Okay. And they're literally going from being able, and if it's not adrenal burnout, it's either fibromyalgia, some sort of autoimmune condition. And for my own self, it ended up in a spinal misalignment, which I'm now addressing, and I've gotten this taken care of over the last 2 years. But as a matter of fact, I'm actually working on a new book that I'm calling Undriven, which is all about unraveling all that bullshit and all that stress that you accumulate over a 20-year period. Because you're right, my journey as an entrepreneur has not been a graceful one whatsoever. As a matter of fact, there's been a lot of uncomfortable moments. So what it looks like is a lot of extremes. You're never sort of in that even keel. You're up at this extreme, riding that high, making money, and then you can be down, and you can be losing money, and it can all change in a heartbeat either way. So one of the things that I think is really important from mindset is from the very beginning, understand the difference between a need and a want. That and I'm giving really practical tips here, because we could talk philosophy, but I really want people to hear me and listen to me, because I've been through this. So a need, I need a car, but I want a Mercedes Benz. So let's just break it down to that obvious, right? You want to get the big house. You want to get, but all of those things are responsibilities and they're obligations. And then what happens, and I don't know how old you are, but I'm in my mid 40s. And once you get through certain layers of life, what you're evolving in your 20s and your 30s and in your 40s, you're always evolving as a human being. And if you make it to 40, you're going to look around and you're going to say, what the hell do I have all this crap? Or has this happened to you? Why do I have all this crap around me?
This month.
Oh my gosh, I want to hug you right now. So and I had an interesting thing happen to me, because all of a sudden I was like, I have to get, this stuff is cluttering up my mind. I had a basement full of just stuff. Kid toys, Christmas decorations, you name it. I have 1,000 square foot basement that has accumulated a bunch of crap. And the basement flooded like a month ago. Okay. And so I was already planning on having a rummage sale. That's a very Midwestern term, right? But I wasn't going to sell anything. I was just going to give it away. So I'm like, I don't even want money for this stuff. I just want it gone. That's how desperate I felt that all of this junk was weighing me down. Well, and I'm getting to a point here, because what I want to say is a basement is a great metaphor for your subconscious mind. Okay, so how much over 40 years, over 20, 30 years, how much junk do you accumulate in the basement of your mind? Okay, so I kind of put that out there that I want to get rid of this stuff. And then there was a storm, my basement flooded. And in one weekend, I got rid of all that junk. And I felt so much lighter.
Yeah.
I was so happy, and insurance paid for it. It was awesome, right?
Well, you wound up getting paid for it.
I got paid to get rid of the junk, and I was going to give this stuff away for free. But my point is, I wouldn't have accumulated all of that stuff if I had not tricked myself. Because, I grew up in the 80s, and Monopoly was very popular. And how do you win at Monopoly? You have to bankrupt all your friends, right? You have to constantly climb that ladder to get to the top. Well, part of this creates this mindset where we're always thinking bigger is better. That we have to build these empires, that we have to crush the competition. And it's this very masculine energy, right? And then I think that you start to do that, and you build your empire, and you sit on the top, and you're the pharaoh now. And then you look around and you're like, all of this stuff is weighing me down. Because every time you buy that expensive car, or you get that house that maybe you're not really ready for because you had 2 years of good revenue, then now you've got an obligation. You've got a responsibility. That responsibility is let's just pretend for every financial responsibility you create, you've just attached a 20-pound weight to your mind, and it's pulling you, right? Because now what are you going to do when you have 3 bad years and you have a hard time making that mortgage? So that's let me just say that's lesson number 1, is really understand the difference between a need versus a want. All right. And then I think that taking this a little bit deeper into I started the show off talking about delegation. When you build, I have actually, and if I would love for you to meet some of my team members, but I have built the most amazing workforce that I could have ever imagined. And Henry, I have not built this workforce because I'm some amazing leader. I didn't do this because I have a glowing, friendly, warm personality. In fact, a lot of times I'm the opposite of that. I can be really very driven and cutthroat. But I haven't built this workforce because I've made the best decisions always. And I've learned that the reason I have built such a powerful workforce and a powerful team is because my business is built on a mission. And so my tip, my secret thing here that I'm sharing is that when your business is built on a mission, you will naturally attract the partners into your life that you need. And this is where that delegation comes. You are doing your team members a disservice when you are not feeding into their strengths. You know, when you're not giving them the opportunities to flourish, if you're hoarding, if you're that type of business owner that you're going and you're like, move, I can do that. You know, you think you can do everything better yourself. You know, that may be true. But if you take the 20 minutes it takes to show that person how to do it, and then they start doing it more often than you do, they will become better at it. My son is 16 years old. His name is Hayden. He just got his first job at the movie theater. So it's just, you know, like a regular movie theater. They got an IMAX, but he comes home on his first day on the job, and it was the biggest weekend in the history actually of movie openings was the Avengers this past weekend.
I just saw it.
I did too. So we all saw Infinity War. Well, so my son comes home from his first day on the job, and he says to me that there was 3 different managers working at the movie theater that day. He said one manager would pass by him and sort of grumpily discipline him and say, "You're doing this wrong." And then she would kind of stomp off. "You're doing it wrong." And it was his first day. He's like, "Well, I haven't really gotten trained how to do this. I was just told to go do it." And then she like stomp off. And he said the second manager came by and she said, "You're doing this wrong." And then she would in detail explain to him how to do it. Like she would give him the step-by-step, okay, this is what you should do instead. And then he said there was a third manager that came by and "You're doing this wrong," and then got down and showed him in a very pragmatic way, "Here's how you do it." And so I looked at him and I said, you know, someday you're going to manage someone. Someday you're going to be that manager. I said, "Which manager are you going to be?" And he said, "I think it's very important that you explain to people exactly what the expectations are and you show them step by step how to do that." So here's this lesson from the 16-year-old kid that can innately see the difference. And so what does this mean to us as leaders? It means that when you make that investment, you know, the best thing you can do is invest in yourself. The next best thing is invest in other people, because that will pay off. And also they're going to think of things that you didn't think of. So trusting your team, when you build trust in them, and hey, I've been an entrepreneur a long time, which means I've had plenty of people burn me, you know, but I haven't let that burn damage me to the point where I'm no longer willing to trust. And so at my company, everyone that comes in, I put them through a business boot camp, which means they go through a 6-week period where they learn every job in the company. And what this does is, first of all, now they understand like this person's job, they understand how that person's job affects their job. And it helps them get to know each other right off the bat. And when they need something, they know where to go to get it because they've done all of those, or they've had a taste of all of those other pieces. Now, that doesn't necessarily translate to an online space kind of business, you know, because like we have an office, we have 20 employees here. So it very much translates to that type of business. One of the lessons that I'm actually learning and continuing to learn now is that there is a big difference between running a brick and mortar versus running a digital online space. And so I think that actually you and I are perfect partners because you've got all the experience in the online space.
Yeah, no, I love it. And it's so funny. I love what you were saying about how you would, when you work towards a mission, you start to talk about how you're going to get there and what's important to you. Like when I'm interviewing a new team member, the first thing that I think of, I explain to them is our values, our core values here. What's important to us and what's important to me personally. Then I ask them, does that align with you? You know, do you share those values as well? And I said, there's no wrong answer. So I just want the truth. And some people have said, no, I don't align with some of that stuff. And I'm like, fantastic. You just saved a hell of a lot of time, and so did I, right? But the folks that do come on board and they understand the value of turnaround time. They understand that the quicker we can get our clients making money, right, the more they're going to come back and get more stuff done, right? And so our goal is to help them make more money, right? So I've had some team members in the past that are like super artistic, and there's nothing wrong with that.
They don't get any administrative stuff done.
Yeah, they're not business focused. They're very artsy, which is cool, but we're very business focused and business driven. So it's not going to work in this business, right? In this atmosphere, unless they get someone to fill that skill gap. Right, exactly.
And allow that person to do their job. Like before we started here, I brought Roxanne in to help me because I don't even want to put that in my head.
No, and that you stay in your lane.
I stay in my lane.
That is the one thing. I have a client, Dom Fawcett. If this one thing, if you go to him and say, what has Henry taught you over the past year and a half? He would say, he told me to stay in my lane. And I was like, Dom, what is that worth to you today? He said hundreds and thousands of dollars. Because
love it.
If I were to try to do the video editing, the this, the that, I would be donezo. And so I explained to him, that's the power of staying in your lane. You have to focus on what it is that you do best and find the folks that will help you. Like Roxanne, she's good at Facebook. I just saw her. She did 100 shares real quick, like with her eyes closed, and so that's the key. That's how you scale. That's how you get better. That's how you get bigger. That's how there's so much value in this episode. I was just going to go into a recap mode, and I was like, you know what? I can't. It would take us a half an hour, but there's so much here that I want our listeners and our viewers on Facebook to take away, and understanding the power of focus. If there's one thing you can take away from this episode today, is the power of focus, and really focusing in on what matters most and understanding the difference between a want and a need. I want to go back to that just for a quick second. You talked about, as you get older and you mature, there's different parts of your life that, my wife and I just had a son 8 months ago, and it changes everything.
Yes, it does.
It changes everything. And, I was looking at things, and I was saying, I saw all of these weights attached to my ankles and my arms. And I just was like, if I can get rid of some of this stuff, I know people will look at me and think I'm absolutely like I've gone mad, because they know Henry as the guy who likes the stuff. Right. But I looked at it recently and I said, what if I got rid of all this stuff, the amount of weight that would shed? What if we were able to take that money and reinvest it into the business? What would that do for us as a family? What would that do for us as a team, as a business? And it was so funny. Gary Vaynerchuk said the other day, he had a guy come up to him, and the guy was like, I know you're not into the stuff, Gary, but what about those folks that are into the stuff? And Gary was like, dude, do you, man? I'm not telling you to not be into the stuff. But he goes, if you want the Porsche dealership, the worst thing you can do is buy the Porsche. And I was like, I will probably never forget that to the day that I die. He said, don't buy the Porsche. Focus on buying the dealership, because the Porsche is going to weigh you down.
That's right.
And I was just like, my God, if I knew that when I was 27, when I first started my business, I would be, I don't even know where I'd be right now. You know what I mean? But I'm not here to regret. I'm just here to say, wow.
And on that, for the younger viewers, on the other hand, let me tell you something. Your naivete about business will actually serve you, because let's be honest, Henry, if we knew now what we knew, if we had the knowledge that we have now, would we have even started, or would we have been scared to death?
That's I thought you were going to go somewhere else with that, but I like where you went.
It's okay to be naive. And you know what? It's okay to waste your money on some junk in your 20s because no one can tell you those things until you experience them yourself. Right. You know, somebody, if it might have been it wasn't Gary Vee, somebody back in when we were 27, back in the day, was telling us we didn't need that. Maybe it was our grandparents or whatever. Karen. You know, we didn't listen.
No. Exactly. and we just did it anyway.
Did it anyway. And you know what? We're okay.
We are, because if that didn't happen, we wouldn't have the wisdom and the experience to help the folks that we're trying to help today understand the importance of it. And so,
I agree. And it's like I love what just happened to me with that basement, you know? Cleared out 20 years of clutter in one day.
That was like a godsend.
It really was. That's another mindset lesson. You know, I could look at that as like stress and, oh my God, my basement flooded, you know, this sucks. No, I was like, woohoo.
It's like, it's not what happens. It's how you react to it. I mean, I live my life like that, and it's helped me tremendously get to where I am today. And just understanding that at the end of the day, it all works out and it's going to be okay. And whatever hardship that you're going through right now, it's temporary.
It is. Yeah.
It's temporary. And that's why I wanted to just hammer home the point before we jet. Mindset is everything.
It is.
Mindset is everything. You can sink your ship faster than anything if you have the poor mindset, but you can get back on your feet and keep driving if you have the right one.
That's right. So I got some final thoughts for you. And this is my book, Conscious Communication. It's probably backwards because I think the camera's reversed, but I love my favorite tagline from my book is everything you say, everything you do, every word you speak, every action you take, every choice you make in the thinnest sliced moments of life is either creating a connection to what you want or it's driving a deeper connection. And I think that is perfect because we've talked about distraction, we've talked about mindset, we've talked about what you're doing. And so if anyone wants to know more about me, please find me anywhere online, maryshores.com, SHORES. I always say if you check out this book on Amazon, Conscious Communication, read the description and a handful of reviews, you'll know whether it's for you or not. And find me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn.
I love it. Mary, thank you so much for spending the hour with us today. And I told you before we went on, I was like, we could go 30, 40 minutes like that. Because I just knew your personality right away. And I said, oh, this is going to be a good episode. But thank you again for coming on the show and sharing your wisdom, sharing your experience, sharing your insight and perspective. I hope a lot of our folks that are listening and watching today got whatever they needed out of today's episode. And that's all I ask for you guys to do is execute on it. Apply what it is that we're saying. Don't just listen to it, because ideas are nothing without execution. You know, we can talk for another hour, but if you don't do anything with this information, you're not going to grow. You're not going to become who it is that you truly want to be. So that's my advice. That's my challenge for you today, is to get out there and apply some of the stuff we talked about today, and watch your business and brand and your personal life transform from it. So real quick, guys, some housekeeping stuff. If you haven't subscribed to this podcast yet, please do. If you haven't shared it with a friend or a colleague, I would invite you to do that as well. And I thank you in advance for that. And if you liked what you heard today, if you can take a second and go on iTunes and write just a quick little written review, you don't know how far that goes when it comes to feedback and helping us spread the word about branding, about helping you build a business and help you solve the bigger problems in your business. Because at the end of the day, when you solve bigger problems for your clients, they'll be willing to cut you bigger paychecks. So have an awesome day, guys, and I'll catch you on the next episode.